Good evening and welcome to Wigan's virtual council meeting. My name is Councillor Steve Dauber and I am the Mayor of Wigan. For members' information, this meeting is being live streamed, and so please mute your microphone and turn off your video when not speaking to minimise background noise and distractions. Should you wish to speak on an item, then please indicate this by using the chat facility and typing "speak" or "s", and then wait until I invite you to speak. At that point, unmute your microphone and put your video on. Can I emphasise that the chat facility must not be used for private conversations between councillors and officers, and I will not take any inappropriate comments from the chat facility this evening, and so please only use "speak" or "s", and then I will bring you in at the relevant point. You can of course also use the chat function to signify that you are against an item which is on the agenda by typing "against" or "A". I will also request the officers who are administering the meeting to mute any member who may disregard the rules if I feel this is necessary, and any unnecessary interruptions will not be tolerated. Those same officers may use the chat facility to communicate with me regarding the workings of the meeting. Democratic Services will be timing the speeches, and if you are nearing your allotted time, then a message will be placed in the chat facility to give you a minute's warning. Please state your name for the audience before you speak, unless I have just mentioned your name. You will have been sent a separate etiquette sheet to help with the smooth running of the meeting, and could we please keep to that process? Should I lose a Wi-Fi signal for any reason, then may I suggest that the Deputy Mayor continues to take the item until I am reconnected. If any other members lose connection, then members should try to re-establish their connections, but we need to ensure that the meeting continues without delay. I also need to stress the correct use of the following rules. Points of order. A member may at any time raise a point of order relating only to an alleged breach of these council rules of procedure or the law. The member must indicate the rule or law and the way in which he or she considers it has been breached. As Mayor, I will hear the member immediately and my ruling on the matter will be final. Personal explanation. A member may at any time request myself as the Mayor to allow them to make a personal explanation relating only to some material part of an earlier speech by that member which may appear to have been misunderstood in the present debate. My ruling on the admissibility of a personal explanation will be final. We now have a pre-recorded prayer which has been prepared for the council meeting by the Reverend Sam Nicholson from Wigan Parish Church.
In this week where we want to I thought it'd be good to begin by remembering him in prayer. God of majesty, give rest to your servant Philip, who having served his queen and country, has passed from this life, full of years, yet strong in spirit.
Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can, Mr. Mayor. Now, yeah, I think we'll move on. We'll move on from the video. I think we had an issue with screen sharing, which we've managed to stop now, Mr. Mayor. Apologies to everybody. So we'll carry on with the proceedings. Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you for that. Can I remind members of the need to respect each other, and I will continue to chair these meetings fairly and to show impartiality. The rules of conduct for the meeting have been circulated by email to all members, and a copy are in your Modern Gov app library section. Apologies for absence. Chief Executive.
Good evening, colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've had formal apologies this evening from Councillor James Grundy, Councillor Steve Jones, Councillor Christine Roberts and Councillor Jim Talbot. We've received no further apologies for this evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. The minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of March 2021. I will move the acceptance of these as a correct record. Leader?
Beg to second, Mr. Mayor.
Can I now put the minutes to the vote? All those against the approval of the minutes, please show in the chat facility. I have no one against the minutes, so those minutes have been accepted. The Mayor's announcements. Other mayoral announcements have been deferred to a later meeting in view of the importance of the main announcement this evening. That is the death of His Royal Highness Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. It is with great sadness that I refer to the death of the Duke of Edinburgh on Friday, 9th of April 2021. The Duke of Edinburgh has visited the borough on several occasions, these being in 1954 with the opening of Wigan Mining and Technical College, 1977 with a visit to the Turnpike Gallery, 1979 a visit to a local school as part of the Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme, 1992 the opening of PPG factory at Hindley Green, and 2009 the opening of Lee Sports Village. On behalf of the Council and the residents of the borough, I would like to express our condolences to the royal family and join the nation and people around the world in mourning his loss. Do any members wish to speak? No members, so at this point may I... Sorry. I have Councillor Mullinex and then Councillor Winstanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's only right that we should mention the visits of the Duke of Edinburgh and the Queen to the borough because they were significant occasions. I was fortunate enough to meet him in 2009 at Lee Sports Village. Obviously, I was among a cast of thousands who were there that day. But one particular part that does stick in my mind and makes me smile on many occasions is the fact that when we sat down to our meal at lunchtime and the wine waiter came round asking which wines would you like to drink, because they'd obviously bought in some very nice ones for the royal visit. And the Duke of Edinburgh replied, he said, no, he said, I'd rather have a pint of Boddingtons. So I think that kind of summed him up as a down-to-earth guy who'd served his country well, both in the armed forces and as the Queen's consort. And he was an excellent and easy guy to talk to. He was very down to earth, and it's true to say about his wit was very sharp. And I think one or two members of the staff at the Sports Village that day had conversations with him and ended up laughing after the conversation. So, Mr. Mayor, I know we're going to place on record our thanks and our remembrance and our sincere thoughts and prayers go out to Her Majesty the Queen at this sad time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Councillor Winstanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'd also like to endorse the words of the leader in paying tribute, and on behalf of the Conservative group, I'd like to extend our condolences to Her Majesty the Queen and the royal family. I think we forget at times like this when people do die, that they aren't just public figures, they are actually someone's husband, father, great-grandfather, grandfather as well. And I think we should all, you know, pay them due respect when people do pass away. And I think it's shameful, some of the things that have gone on online as well during this sad time. But I just really wanted to pay tribute to his great service to the country. His war record was exemplary in terms of his Second World War record, and his service to the Queen as well. You know, this was a job that he didn't sign up for. This was thrust upon him, and he did it in such a, I thought, a tremendous way over many years. I saw a statistic with all the media coverage that we've had over the last few weeks of about 22% of people in the country have either met him or been at an event that he's been at, and that's a staggering amount of people that have actually come into contact with him, either being somewhere, seeing him, or actually meeting him as well. And I also started to think about what his contribution has been to society, well as supporting the Queen and attending all those functions. I know, Mr. Mayor, you've served 2 years in the role of Mayor, but if you think about how long the Queen and Prince Philip were doing that job, it's a tremendous effort. And when we look at some of the things that he's been involved with, and the one that stands out to me, and you referenced it in 1979 when he came to visit the borough to attend a local school, in connection with the Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme. That scheme has been an absolutely fantastic initiative, and the number of ordinary children and young people that have been involved in that throughout the country and the world as well, I think that is absolutely a tremendous thing, and it's given a lot of people you know, a lot of skills and a lot of hope, and put them on the right path in many respects as well. And I think we should pay tribute to his lasting legacy from the Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme. It's obviously an extremely sad time, and we do you know, extend our thoughts, prayers to all those that will miss the Duke of Edinburgh. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Peter Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to endorse the comments of the leader and the leader of the opposition, but I must correct whoever advised you on his visits, because there was an initial visit you didn't mention in your list. That was in 1986, when he and the Queen came to open Wigan Pier. And I was fortunate that day with, we ran the council with committees in those days, and the 5 committee chairmen who'd been most involved in the development of Wigan Pier met him when he took a little barge trip through the canal and then up to the Way We Were Museum, and we met him outside, and there was 5 chairmen, I say, and 4 wives. 1 wife couldn't make it, and we're in this little list, and I'm in the middle of this list of guests, and the Queen comes down and gets to me, and she's Councillor Smith, chairman. I thought, oh, you found all the money, and walked off. And then, of course, the Prince comes down and says, almost the same, but more direct, where did all the money come from to spend this? So I had to explain to him where it came from. And unfortunately, Mr. Mayor, my colleagues, or particularly my colleagues' wives, were not too keen on this, because I was the only one of the 5 he spoke to on both occasions, so I got in trouble. And like the Deputy Leader, of course, I met him again in 2009 when he came with the Queen to open Leeds Sports Village, and we had a visit which involved, first of all, going onto the pitch, watching some children play games, then into the building to introduce to a number of important guests. And then we got on the lift, and the intention was to go to the top floor where the Prince and the Queen had a few moments themselves before going to lunch. So there were 5 people in this lift, the royal couple, myself, and 2 security protection men. And the security protection man pressed the lift to go up, but it went down. Now, can you imagine the number of seconds, milliseconds it takes to go down the floor? And there's a list, so they're very professionally moved the Queen and Prince Philip to the back of the lift. They themselves moved into the front of the lift and put their hands inside their coats. I think we know what they were able to get out more quickly if they did that. And I'm left in the middle of the lift. I'm not sure what to do. Do I protect my monarch and her consort, or do I hide on the floor? But of course, it was simply a mistake. We got down safely and up again. So, but it's a moment I remember, and the Duke found it very funny and just laughed, and they weren't troubled at all. So I think, as Councillor Winston said, he was pretty down to earth. I think he'd been enjoyed his visits. He enjoyed meeting people, and they were very kind. At the end of the visits, we were waiting for them to finish, and there was of course a crowd had arrived outside, and they went and exchanged pleasantries with the crowd, some of whom they obviously knew as regulars, and one of them passed on a book of photographs and they moved on. So they took time and trouble to go there. So we're thankful for what they did promoting Wigan, and I've certainly got good memories of that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. At this point, may I ask for a minute's silence to show a mark of respect for the death of His Royal Highness Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. Thank you. Declarations of interest. The monitoring officer has provided advice to all members and relevant guidance has been issued. Members are asked to consider relevant interests for the purpose of this meeting, and if there are any interests, members must leave the meeting, if necessary, during the relevant item and rejoin after the item has been considered. Please email any declarations to the Democratic Services Manager so that the minutes can be updated accordingly. The morality. I invite the leader to move a recommendation.
Mr. Mayor, it's a pleasure to move that this council agrees that Councillor Marie Morgan is to become the Deputy Mayor for the Municipal Borough of Wigan for the next municipal year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, beg to second.
Thank you. Do any other members wish to contribute? No, I don't seem to have anyone. Can I put the nomination to the vote? All those against the approval of the nomination, please show in the chat facility.
If I may interrupt, Mr. Mayor, I don't seem to have a chat facility, but I'm for. That's Councillor Hulton.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Well, I don't seem to have anyone against, so that is carried. Members should note that this appointment is subject to council approval at the annual general meeting to be held on the 26th of May 2021. State of area report. I will now invite the leader to present the State of the Area report on the activities undertaken in the borough and the proposals for the coming year. Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's probably a year that we'll never forget. To talk about the State of the Area report is going to be heavily dominated by what we've gone through in the last 12 months. People across our borough, residents, businesses, community organisations, partners, council staff, political colleagues have all experienced the most challenging year in living memory. But the qualities we defined as a borough, our sense of pride and togetherness, cooperation, has enabled us to rise to the huge challenge that was in front of us. There are a number of people in this borough who have lost their lives due to COVID-19, and almost 1,000 families are grieving. And on behalf of the council, I wish to send our condolences to each and every one of those families tonight. Many others have been severely ill and will be suffering long-term effects of the virus. Lockdowns and restrictions have been devastating effects on people's mental health and livelihoods. So there is no doubt this has been a year of great sadness and great challenge. But despite that, we've all faced and continue to face, and I'm very proud of how we've responded to this crisis together. I will give a brief overview of the council's response over the past year. I couldn't possibly cover everything, Mr. Mayor, because I'm sure people have other things to do, so I'll certainly not go through it bit by bit. But I'm sure that as you hear it, you'll be proud of what we've achieved together. From the outset, my overriding priority was the health of our people. And that meant, back in March last year, we had to prioritise the areas which were essential to people's lives and their health. To ensure that was done, more than 800 members of our staff were redeployed to frontline roles, including working in hospitals, care homes, COVID testing centres and community hubs. Our workforce stepped up to the challenge by volunteering despite personal risks. Our redeployed staff helped us to establish new rest and recuperation unit at the Mercure Hotel, and more than 300 people were helped through this. Our 7 community hubs delivered more than 39,000 food parcels. Over 7,000 were supported in our communities, and we responded to more than 9,000 calls and web inquiries asking for help. We worked around the clock to purchase our own PPE, and this was to protect our frontline workers and carers in all our community homes, Mr. Mayor, and we succeeded. We donated 100 iPads to our hospitals to ensure loved ones could keep in contact with their families when it was most needed, and we did the same in our care homes. The financial support to our businesses was the difference between businesses surviving or going under. The borough was one of the quickest local authorities nationally to issue government grants to support businesses. So far, the council has issued more than 5,000 business grants worth more than £60 million, and more than 400 local restriction support grants have been distributed, totaling 5.4 million. We also continue to provide business advice and engagement to over 2,000 businesses during the pandemic. Our frontline workers continue to keep everyday essential services running. Our registrars, our crematorium and burial services compassionately helped as many of the tragically bereaved, and the council maintained its full waste collection rota throughout the pandemic, with 200,000 bins a week being emptied despite significant increase in household waste. Our staff on the front line were compelled to work from home, and our IT teams helped make that possible. A remarkable challenge in working practice happened almost overnight, and the work incredibly smooth. While working from home, our staff juggled childcare, homeschooling, filled days with video calls and offer longer working hours due to the impact of the pandemic. Those families of our staff deserve our gratitude for their support during this time. We rolled out testing stations across the borough, including helping with targeting and testing and achieving a much higher success rate than the National Test and Trace system did. And of course, we have supported our NHS colleagues in an incredibly successful rollout of the vaccination programme, with over, as of last night, 132,000 people vaccinated in this borough so far. Politics, Mr. Mayor, took a back seat during all this, and I would like to praise elected members from all political parties in this meeting tonight who've worked tirelessly over the past year to help people in their own communities. We have shown real community leadership and enormous commitment. So as I said in the outset, this is just an overview of what we have achieved as a council with our partners and communities. There is so much more we could say and so many more individual examples and acts of kindness that we could talk about if we had more time. I'd like to place on record my thanks to all our staff and those partners who've responded during the pandemic, for which has helped us get through the most of demanding times. Mr. Mayor, we could look at what the future holds for us, and there is obviously great evidence to show that the impact of the pandemic will last for years to come. It will affect our communities, our businesses, and it will affect individuals and their families. But I think we've got to look forward with optimism. There is certainly a big light at the end of the tunnel now, Mr. Mayor, as often talked about during this crisis. I think we laid a lot out in our last council meeting, Mr. Mayor, in the budget meeting, in terms of what we want to deliver as a council. And I thoroughly believe that is what we'll do. We wanted to make sure there was no lost generation. We wanted to make sure adult services were supported. We wanted to make sure that our community groups and organisations were supported. Once again, Mr. Mayor, we will step up to the challenge and we will deliver. Can I thank all members across the council for the work that you've done during the past 12 months. And particularly, Mr. Mayor, as you agreed to do a second term in the chamber as the Mayor. So thank you very much, and thank you all for the efforts that have gone in over the last 12 months. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Leader. Are these recommendations seconded?
Beg to second, Mr. Mayor.
Do you wish to speak now, Councillor, or reserve your right to speak until later?
I'll reserve my right.
All right, thank you. Do any other members wish to contribute? No one. Just a slight delay. Well, I don't have anyone who wishes to speak. So, Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to echo some of the things that the leader said, I think, you know, we owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to our staff who really stepped up during this last 12 months, over 12 months now, and did all the things that the leader has outlined. And I think in terms of our communities and the people who live here, those who work in the NHS, we owe a tremendous amount of gratitude to them, who worked under severe pressure and putting themselves at risk during this period, particularly in the early stages. We didn't know what effect and impact of it was. And not just hospital staff, but the NHS staff and mental health staff who carried on continuing to provide the care that many of our citizens required. And staff staff in care homes and home care who continued to work through and support those residents who needed that help. And I don't think we can go without saying thank you to all those community and voluntary organisations that worked with our locality hubs in ensuring that people got food parcels, that people were supported, that people got the prescriptions and the medication that they needed, and did all the work to support people in the community. And particularly, I'd like to pay tribute to the Armed Forces Hub and the people there who did a tremendous amount of distribution of food around the borough, and what an amazing job they did. And of course, the leader said, and I think it needs to be echoed, all members of the council, regardless of political persuasion, worked within their communities to sort out help for residents, support for residents, food parcels, and people did various things, but every member of this council supported their communities. And so going forward, and I think, you know, we're now hopefully moving out of the situation, but within the NHS and within health and care and within community services and mental health, we know that there's a tremendous backlog. This is in acute hospitals, but we also recognise the mental health impact that's had on many residents. And so those people who've been working flat out for the last 12 months are going to have an additional load, even when the pressure of COVID is relieved. So I think we have to recognise the work that's going to have to be done. And I just think, you know, it's right to congratulate and express our gratitude to all those people. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Leader, do you wish to sum up?
No, I think we've said everything we need to say, Mr. Mayor. And I could just echo again the thoughts of what the words that the Deputy Leader said. And it's a big thank you also to every member of this council, all our staff and all the community groups and all the NHS for a fantastic response that this borough showed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Can I now put the report to the vote? All those against the approval of the report, please show in the chat facility. I have no one against, so that has been accepted. Item 7, members not seeking re-election on the 6th of May 2021. On behalf of the council and the people of the borough, I would like to acknowledge the contributions of those members who are not seeking re-election and offer our thanks to councillors Bill Clerk, James Grundy, John Hilton, Phil Kelly and Marlene Whittam. Placing on record the council's appreciation of the service of these 5 former members, I invite other members to say a few words. I have Councillor Paul Collins and then Councillor Winston Lee.
Thank you for letting me speak, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to extend a huge thank you to my ward colleague, Marlene Whittam. As you may well know, Marlene stepped up to the plate in the middle of December in 2017, a very bad winter, at very short notice, following Councillor Edwardson stepping down for personal reasons. So it was a very difficult campaign, and she managed to go through it, obviously, with the help of the Labour team. I think we should recognise also Marlene, even though she may be one of the newer councillors, is by no means one of the less experienced. Marlene, for many years, ran the Community Association in Shevington, which covers the whole ward. She's very community focused, and even before and during her term as a councillor, more so in her term as a councillor, she's led on initiatives such as digital inclusion, so we can get older people connected to the internet, communicating with each other to deal with things like isolation, things like that. She's also led an initiative to have a sustainable programme of defibrillators in different various parts around the ward. She's working very passionately alongside ward colleagues and other colleagues in order to get local care provision for older people in Shevington, which is desperately needed. And I think something we need to also appreciate as well is something we forget is the value of teamwork. And when you've got a ward colleague working together, it makes life a lot easier because you can be in two places at once. You've got someone standing in your corner when you're not available to be somewhere else. And she's also been a brilliant support for me during times of problems when I've had issues. So I'd just like to extend a huge thank you, and also on behalf of local members and local residents as well. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Winstanley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I would like to place on record my thanks to all those councillors who are stepping down. It's not necessarily an easy role being a councillor, and it does require a lot of commitment and dedication to your local community. So no matter what your political background, having served, I do thank all those members for actually doing that, because we all come into politics to help make a difference and to improve our local communities. So for those people who are deciding to step down this election for whatever reason, I do wish them every success for the future. Obviously, I've known some of these councillors who are stepping down for more than others. Obviously, I've known John Hilton for a very long time, because he's been on for a very long time himself. But I also work with Bill Clark quite closely as a member of his charity committee, and we had some great times and some good fundraising events for Bill, in his time to raise money for his two charities. But I would particularly wanted to mention James Grundy, who is stepping down. I know James wanted to step down last year, but obviously due to the pandemic and the local elections being cancelled, that wasn't possible. I've known James for many years, and members may thank me or not for this, but it was my fault that James got involved in politics. He wanted to join the Conservative Party, so I said, right, come here, sign your membership form, and I got him involved very quickly. And James is a tremendous campaigner. He will literally go anywhere to deliver leaflets and knock on doors, and the dedication that he's shown to his community in Loughton is second to none. And I think that's why he was firstly elected as councillor for Loughton, but then subsequently got re-elected on several other occasions. And I think without his dedication and to the local community, I don't think he would have done, because we went through some very difficult times from 2010 onwards. And having joined the group, James joined a group of 11 and I was group leader. We then moved into a period where we quickly lost a number of councillors, and for all of us that were involved in mainstream political parties, we know that when your party gets into government, your fortunes go the other way, and it's local councillors that feel the brunt of the backlash. But James managed to keep his seat during that really difficult time, and it's not easy being a councillor on this council on your own when you're the only Conservative there, and I know it was quite tough for James, but he persevered and he carried on, and bit by bit we built that group up again. James has always been tremendously loyal to me and very supportive, and when I did come back onto the council in 2016, James said before the election that he would be more than happy to step aside and allow me to lead the group if that's what the group wanted, and he was true to his word, and he did that, and then has acted as deputy up until May last year. James is obviously now going on to different things in public life, and I know he was tremendously proud to have been elected as Member of Parliament for Leigh. And we were tremendously proud. I'm not quite sure all the members were proud, but we were tremendously proud on our side that when he won that general election in 2019. And we certainly wish him every success as he carries on his role of public service in that role. And we certainly wish him all the best for the future, and we hope he stays as the Member of Parliament for Lee for many years to come. But so I just wanted to pay tribute to James, but also to thank all those other councillors who are stepping down tonight for their service to the people of Wigan and the borough. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that, Councillor. I have a number of councillors who wish to speak. I will next have Councillor Bullen, then Prescott, Reader and Rotherham. So Councillor Bullen, you're up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for inviting me to speak. Good evening, everyone. I want to mention our Councillor Bill Clark, Ashton Ward, elected member. Bill has been very generous over the years in his commitment to public service, because I don't know if everyone knows, but he has actually been an elected member on 2 local authorities. First, Bill was in Trafford, and then he came to us in Wigan. So it's a significant number of years, 19 years service. Wonderful. In both authorities, Bill has made good use of his expertise, particularly in planning. He was chair of planning in Trafford, and he guided them through their development of the Trafford. When Bill was mayor in Wigan, I commented then that he was our gentleman mayor, because he's always represented the borough in a very gracious way. It was a very special occasion at the Mayor's Ball when we were entertained by the choir Milltown Sound, where Joan, Bill's wife, is a lead member. So as we say farewell to Bill for his service as a Labour councillor, we say thank you, Bill, and we wish you well on behalf of the communities you have served. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll now move on to Councillor Prescott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think all of the plaudits have been offered by colleagues are well deserved. I'd like to thank all the members for their dedication, for their hard work. I think Councillor Winstanley pointed out before, the role of a councillor can be a very demanding one and difficult one. When I look down the list of those people who are not standing for re-election again, I look at John Hilton, I look at Phil Kelly and Bill Clark. I didn't have the pleasure of serving with Councillor Whittingham, but there was a glowing few words said by a ward colleague as to the work that she's undertaken as a ward councillor, and I have had some occasion to be able to work with her on a number of things, and she's very dedicated to the role of community. So I thank you for that. John Hilton was, and Phil Kelly and Bill Clark were all members of both the Regulation and Licensing Committee, as you were yourself, Mr. Mayor, and as members of the Planning Committee. John, as a former chair of Planning Committee and a vice chair of Planning Committee, and ditto for Regulation. That was prior to me and my taking up the role. I had the pleasure of chairing many meetings with John, who was very knowledgeable in all those areas, and was glad to share his experiences with me as somebody who had taken up the role when I first took on the role. So I was very grateful for his friendship and for his help. Phil and I share support for the same football team, that's Everton Football Club, and we had many discussions around that, obviously with Billy Rotherham chipping in the opposite direction, but never mind. It was good fun to work with them, but it was also a pleasure to work with them as well. I thank them for their support in those roles. Ditto for Bill Clark. Bill was very knowledgeable when it came to planning, and I thank them all for their help and support in the role as chairman as I had at that time. We will miss them. Their experience will be missed. Their friendship will be missed. But I wish them all the very best in their retirement, and I thank them for the help they've given me over the years. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Reader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I'd just like to echo what people have said about all the members who are stepping down this time, and thanks for what they've done in all different ways. But I want to pay tribute to my friend and colleague, Councillor John Hilton, who I don't know I can sum up in a few minutes, 35 years service to the council. Naturally, I think Paul's just touched on the issues around planning. One of the things that was invaluable to me and to the ward was John's knowledge of planning. And all the stuff he did locally, but also across the borough. But something that probably a lot of other people know is John's knowledge of common land and the common land around our ward. And when you drive through it and see the greenery, a lot of that's through protection that John's done over the years. And that's invaluable to all the residents around, and lots have made comments and asked me to kind of pass thanks on to now. So it's not just from myself personally, it's from residents around. A couple of things that John's been involved in, like I've touched on the planning and the common land, but one of the things that probably people who are on the council now are not aware of is when John sat on the transport committee, he instigated the yellow bus scheme coming to this area, which proved really successful, and you know, that was down to the credit of John and pushing that forward for this area. So that was really important for the borough and made us one of the first. But one of the things I want to say tonight, and it's something a little bit different, and really it's probably not about John actually. We all know that when you become an elected member, it has strains on your family, and you put things to one side because you're actually looking after other people. So I want to pay credit to Margaret, his wife, who stood by him for 35 years doing this. John had a full-time job, raised a family, and that's it. Margaret, he couldn't have done it without Margaret at his side and support him. And I think we all understand that when we do our things within the community. We know we need that kind of support, because sometimes you're out there many hours, whether it's meetings or doing things, and the phone never stops ringing. So my thing is really to Margaret, to thank her, because I don't think John would have been able to do it over 35 years without that support. So thanks, John, for all your support you've given me personally, to the residents of the ward, that's Aspel, New Springs, Welle and formerly Standish. But I think it's really important that we remember the contribution that Margaret's made to you and to this council and to the Labour Party. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Reader. Councillor Rotherham.
Hello. I'd just like to pay tribute to Phil Kelly, who's obviously one of my colleagues in Worsley Mains. I mean, where do we start with Phil Kelly? Phil and I were born and raised in inner city Liverpool. Phil in the south end of the city, me in the north end. He's an Evertonian, I'm a Red. In most of the things, we are very alike, apart from our height. Phil's family moved out to Speke, near to the new terminal at the airport. Our house was demolished under the slum clearance scheme in the early 60s. Our house was in Stonycroft, near Old Swan. Phil spent some time in Alderley Hospital when he was 8 or 9, when he was involved in the road traffic accidents, broken leg, 14 weeks, a long time to be in hospital. He left school and had a variety of jobs before he joined the Merchant Navy, sailing the 7 seas. On one of his trips down the west coast of Africa, he witnessed some of the hardships suffered by the locals loading and unloading the ships. I believe this helped form his socialist principles, which he has followed all his life. Phil came ashore eventually and started employment in Ford Motor Company in Halewood. I chose those words very carefully so as not to confuse him with the many thousands who did actually work there. I started my apprenticeship at Ford's in 1962, and we eventually met up, having been friends for nearly 50 years. When I started work, my number was 702. When my son started in 1984, he was 48,000 plus. At any peak time, there were 13,500 people employed there. In fact, we've been asked many times how many work there. We always said about half. I always said Phil had the best job in Ford's, but I always had after I left. During one of Phil's visits home, he arranged with a shipmate to call at his house to pick up a suit length that they required in some foreign climate. It was during this visit he met the love of his life, Val, the shipmate's sister. Val had moved from Bootle to Netherton, known as Dodge City in Liverpool. Very strangely, I met my wife Sheila, who lived in Bootle as well. Phil and Val moved to Wigan in the early 70s and bought a house around the corner from where Sheila and I lived in Worsley Mains. Years later, we discovered that Sheila and Val had been classmates at junior school. And even stranger, they were born within a couple of days of each other in Walton Hospital maternity unit. Phil and I were shop stewards in Fords and decided to join the Labour Party and soon became involved in branch business, alternating as chairman. Becoming frustrated with the inactivity of one of the councillors, we thought somebody should challenge this councillor. As it happened, the branch deselected the sitting councillor and I was chosen to be the next candidate. I was duly elected and Phil decided he would not challenge any of the elected councillors. This is one of Phil's main attributes. He is very, very loyal and you can always rely on him. He spent an awful lot of time leafleting and knocking on doors, helping Labour candidates from right across the borough. He was selected as a candidate for the Winstanley ward, where he was elected for one term. And then, of course, you all know he's been elected since then in Worsley Mains. He should have been the candidate for Labour in Worsley Mains when Councillor Brogan stood down. But because of a rule I've never agreed with, it became a woman-only shortlist. Phil is not getting any younger, mind you, neither am I. He's decided not to stand now or in the future. I have relied on him an awful lot for the helping in the community centre and our ward. He has always been available for words of encouragement and support. He would never let anyone down when it came to distributing leaflets, etc. He was always played an active part in the committees he sat on, and I know how much he has enjoyed his time on the regulation committee. I'm sure Paul will understand exactly what we're saying. We had quite a good relationship on that. We have been known to have a pint together in St Jude's on a Friday night. He's a good guy and I'm proud to have him as a friend. Thanks, mate. Enjoy your golf and retirement. Well done. I'll miss you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rotherham. Can I now begin Councillor Conway?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're on, Councillor.
Right, thank you. It's very hard to follow the amount of words that Chris said then, because Chris goes a lot further back with him. But I'd like to congratulate John on the long and successful career he's had in local politics. His retirement is very well deserved, but will leave a massive gap in our ward. There's some big shoes to fill there, but we'll just have to try our best. He certainly taught me a lot over the years about campaigning, leafleting, just the general run-of-the-mill things. And I even now know more about trains than I ever could have imagined at one time. I even know where Shap is and how to get a steam train over there. I would like to thank John for his services and his commitment, and to wish him and Margaret a very happy, healthy and long retirement. Cheers, John. God bless. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I have no one else who wishes to speak, so can I thank all these members? Can I thank all these members for their time and commitment to the council. In moving the following reports, I will assume that all seconders will reserve the right to speak at the end of the other speakers. Constitutional issues. Amendments to the Constitution. We have a report on pages 31 to 56 of the agenda which sets out the proposed amendments to the Council's constitution as detailed in the report and outlined in the minutes of the Constitutional Working Group minutes of 24th of February 2021. Are the amendments moved?
Move, Mr. Mayor. Move, Mr.
The recommendation seconded.
Beg to second, Mr. Mayor. Reserve the right to speak.
Leader first, yeah. No, do any other members, sorry, do any other members wish to contribute? Quite a delay. I don't have anyone to speak, so Deputy Leader.
Well, I don't have anything to answer, so that'll do, sir.
Right, thank you. And Leader, you wish to sum up?
I was more than happy to move the report, Mr. Mayor, so I think we can move on.
Right, can I put the report to the vote? All those against the approval of the report, please show in the chat facility. I have no one against, so the result of the vote is accepted. Report of the Independent Remuneration Panel. We have a report on pages 57 to 138 of the agenda, which asks the Council to consider the report of the Council's Independent Remuneration Panel. Are the nominations moved? I invite the Leader to move the recommendations.
Pleasure to move the report, Mr. Mayor.
Are the recommendations seconded?
Beg to second, Mr. Mayor. Reserve the right to speak if I need to.
Do any other members wish to contribute? I have no one, so Deputy Leader.
Even I can't reply to that debate, Mr. Mayor.
Leader, do you wish to sum up?
No, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad I read all the report now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Can I put the report to the vote? All those against the approval of the report, please show in the chat facility. I have no one against, so that has been accepted. Local authority governors. The Council is requested to approve the nominations for the appointment and reappointment of school governors as set out on pages 139 and 144 of the Council agenda. And the nominations moved. I invite Councillor Bullen to move the recommendations. Councillor Bullen. Councillor Bullen, are you with us? You froze on my screen.
Nominations, Mr. Bull.
Are the
recommendations? The nominations, Mr. Mayor.
Are the recommendations seconded, Leader?
Yes, they are seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Do any other members wish to contribute? No one seems to wish to contribute on this item. Can I go straight to the vote? All those against the approval of the report, please show in the chat facility. I have no one against, so that has been accepted. Item 9, questions and comments. Councillor Winstanley wishes to make a comment on the Cabinet meeting of 18th of March 2021, minute 79, places for everyone, a proposed joint development plan document of 9 Greater Manchester districts. Councillor Winstanley.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Yes, as I was reading through all the all the minutes of the previous cabinet meetings and committee meetings to decide what I might wish to ask a question or comment on. I came across this report, which is Places for Everyone, a proposed joint development plan document for 9 Greater Manchester districts. Now, I was quite surprised at this because we were constantly told, and have been told for years and years and years, that this Greater Manchester plan needed to be approved by all 10 districts. If one district rejected it, then the whole thing would fall. So imagine my surprise when Stockport vote to reject the plan, and yet it comes back again. It's like Trigger's broom in Only Fools and Horses. It's had 20 different broom handles, it's had 20 different brush heads, but it's still here. It never goes away. And I appreciate that we need to have a plan, but do we need to have this particular plan? What I'm also concerned about is the lack of consultation with members. Yes, we've had a seminar, which I was very grateful for the seminar, and I took part, and I know it was probably one of the best attended seminars that we've had from a member's perspective, because I think it is so important to members, and I think it's generated so much interest from the local communities. So I'm disappointed that we've not had a chance yet as elected members and this full council to debate this plan. And I wonder when we are going to have an opportunity to do, because this has been going on from before I came onto the council. This has been knocking about for about 6 years, this. So it shows you how old it is. So can we get on with it and let's have a debate and let members of this council have their say on it so our views can be heard, and let's put it to the vote here, and then we can decide what we do and how we move forward. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I invite Councillor Paul Prescott to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And respond I will. In response to the question by Councillor Winstanley, can I inform Council this evening that the report to Cabinet on Places for Everyone related to a procedural mechanism required to enable the move from a plan for 10 councils to a plan for 9 councils. This was required after the withdrawal of Stockport from the GMSF process, and it was the decision for Cabinet to make, and as such did not require consultation. Producing a plan of 9 will enable Wigan and the 8 other districts to meet the government's requirement to have an up-to-date local plan in place by December 23. If this requirement is not met, then there is a serious risk that the government will intervene in the planning process, heaven forbid. But as it would have been required with GMSF, the plan will be subject to formal consultation, and a formal council decision will be needed to submit it for public consultation. And following examination to adopt the plan, therefore, there will be ample opportunity for further public and member involvement in Places for Everyone, but at the appropriate time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Winstanley wishes to make a comment on minute 33, Confident Council Scrutiny Committee, 29th of March 2021, Community Safety Priorities. Councillor Winstanley.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. Yes, again, as I was going through the documents, I came across the community safety priorities, and obviously I welcome this particular report, and it does detail quite a lot of activity over the past 12 months, and it also looks at the number of areas that we've seen a reduction in crime, such as 16% fall in thefts, 13% fall in burglary, and 9% drop in car crimes, which is to be welcomed, but I'm not quite sure how much faith we've got in these figures, given the fact that Greater Manchester Police under Andy Burnham has failed to record 80,000 plus crimes. So I'm not quite sure how much faith we can have in these figures. It's also noted that obviously GMP is only the second ever police force to be placed in special measures, which is obviously something that is extremely worrying. But focusing on the plan, I'd like to know from the cabinet member how we are actually going to monitor this, and what are going to be the outcomes of success. I'm particularly looking at antisocial behaviour, Operation Bluefin. I obviously welcome this. We need tougher measures to deal with antisocial behaviour. We're starting to see, as we emerge from lockdown, antisocial behaviour raising its ugly head once again. Now, before Councillor Anderson comes in, I hope he's not going to go on about austerity, because we've had 2 general elections that have dealt with the austerity issue. So the people, not only of Lee, but the country gave their views on what they thought of that. We need to deal with the issues as of today. And I'm no doubt Councillor Anderson will welcome the £500,000 mentioned in this report that's going into Lee for safer streets as well, helping deliver on those government priorities. And I'm sure he will welcome the extra money that's come from the government to recruit extra police officers. I'll come on to my own question later on about that. But so if Councillor Anderson could answer the question about how we're going to deal with those priorities and what are going to be the measures of success, and let's see us drive down antisocial behaviour and take those criminals off the street. I know he shares my passion to ensure that we want to ensure that our streets are safer. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I invite Councillor Anderson to respond if he so wishes. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll reply directly to Councillor Winstanley's question without making direct reference to austerity. The Police and Community Safety Partnership is undertaking a joint strategic needs assessment, and this will be used to review priorities for the next 12 months and also inform an action plan for the next 3 years. And I'm sure it will include antisocial behaviour as a key priority. This will also be required to align to the new GM Police and Crime Commissioner's Office priorities, which will be published later in the year. The Police and Community Safety Partnership will develop a performance dashboard based on the above to monitor the impact of its work on crime and disorder in Wigan. So there will be full scrutiny of how successful or not the action plan is. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Winstanley wishes to ask the following question on minute 33, Confident Council Scrutiny Committee, 29th of March 2021, Community Safety Priorities. Councillor Winstanley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Anderson, for your direct response to that comment. So I'd like to move on now to the levy that's been placed on Wigan Council taxpayers by the Police and Crime Panel, endorsed by the 10 leaders of Greater Manchester, well, 9 anyway, in terms of this extra funding that we're putting into GMP. And I'd like to know exactly what we will get in terms of those extra resources, because I'm led to believe quite a lot of this extra funding and new police officers are going into city centre policing. And I've noticed in this report as well that it says we will lobby for extra police officers. Well, that's a bit wishy-washy, so I'd like to see exactly how much we're going to get. It's like going into a negotiation saying we want to do this. Well, what are we getting from it? You don't go and buy a new car and say, well, I hope to get that particular model or that particular colour. So how much are we getting, and how many extra police officers will we see on the streets of Wigan? So how many bobbies on the beat are we going to see from this extra money? Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
I invite Councillor Anderson to respond. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. Obviously, I want to thank Councillor Winstanley for his question. I'll be as direct as I possibly can be, maybe not totally to his liking, but I think the Police and Community Safety Partnership receives an annual community safety grant in the region of £250,000 each year from the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office to support the work of the partnership in Wigan. It is also able to bid for other pots of funding passported through the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office from the Home Office and other government departments as they become available. In addition to this, the Mayor and the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office have made a commitment that all Greater Manchester residents will have access to a named, contactable local police officer and police community support officer. Subject to the final policing preset figure, the Mayor has also made a commitment to expand frontline officer numbers by an additional 325 officers. This number will be reviewed following the recent public consultation. We're currently seeking clarification. What will this mean for Wigan Division, and lobbying hard to ensure that Wigan receives its fair share of any new resources. Through specific Police and Community Safety Partnership operations like Operation Bluefin to tackle social behaviour, we're also gaining additional support from GMP specialist units within the borough, such as the off-road motorbike team and the mounted police. So I can reassure Councillor Winstanley that even at the confirmation hearing of the new Chief Constable, I made it quite clear that it was important that he was not Manchester-centric, and that there were 9 other district authorities in Greater Manchester which needed the support that they deserved. So you can rest assured. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Item 10, notices of motion. A motion has been submitted by Councillor Herding, which is set out on page 151 of the agenda. Councillor Herding.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to speak tonight. I believe that there are not many in this meeting this evening who haven't, throughout the course of their lives, been faced with a situation requiring them to render some form of first aid to a relative, friend, or even a complete stranger. That first aid could range from simply dealing with a minor cut to delivering mouth-to-mouth resuscitation or managing multiple casualties at a more serious incident. My first experience of first aid was in the 60s when I joined 2nd Atherton Cubs. We received some basic training and a badge. Later, I took part in a first aid competition at Tilsley Scout Hut and we won. A couple of years later, I was on Atherton Park when a boy of similar age to me fell off the climbing bars. He suffered an open fracture to his arm and the broken bone severed his radial artery. Blood was spurting out of his arm and I was able to put pressure on it and shout a passing adult to help until the ambulance arrived. When I became an operational firefighter in 1977, I and some members of the watch formed a first aid competition team, and we spent many weekends travelling to collieries in Yorkshire and to other venues as far away as Leicestershire to compete against teams of miners, the police, the gas board and other utilities. We won a lot of the competitions and also the Greater Manchester Fire competition against other stations from across the county. One of my watch colleagues, Dave Morris, became my best friend, and as we were both promoted through the ranks, we became heavily involved in instructing and delivering first aid training. Dave was the first officer on scene at the Manchester bombing in 1996 and was faced with over 200 casualties. Both he and I have dealt with many serious incidents, both on and off duty over the years, including each delivering CPR whilst on holiday abroad and being first on scene at a serious motorcycle accident on a remote Yorkshire moor. Subsequently, we developed a pre-hospital trauma course for the Fire and Rescue Service, and we both contributed to the production of 2 books, the Firefighter Manual of Trauma Care and the UK version of International First Responder. During the development of the trauma care course, we worked closely with accident and emergency consultants, doctors and nurses from many local hospitals. One of those doctors was Major Tim Hodgetts in the British Army. Tim has completed tours of Northern Ireland, Kosovo, 3 tours in Afghanistan and 4 in Iraq, and has performed as a senior helicopter medic and a senior medical surgeon at Army frontline hospitals. He's now a brigadier and he's the honorary surgeon to Her Majesty the Queen. He's the senior health advisor to the Army and head of the Army Medical Services. And from 21st of May this year, he will be the Army Surgeon General, which is the senior serving doctor within the Armed Forces. As the foremost expert on ballistic injuries, Brigadier Hodgetts was called on the 1st of March to give testimony to the Manchester Arena bombing inquiry. I watched his 3-hour testimony on YouTube. On May 22nd, 2017, the Arena bomb killed 22 people, including parents and children, with 119 victims initially wounded, although this figure was later revised to over 800 injured. The deceased included 10 under age 20, and the youngest fatality was 8 and the oldest 51. During his evidence, Tim highlighted that the traditional ABC, airway, breathing and circulation, needed to be updated to become CABC, the first element being to deal with catastrophic hemorrhage. That is to stop major bleeding where limbs are missing or the bleeding is so severe that the casualty will bleed out even if CPR is administered. The process to stop severe bleeding is quite simple. Apply direct pressure. The process, if that doesn't work, then you pack the wound with a finger, hand or dressings. If that doesn't work, apply a tourniquet, either improvised or using a purpose-made one.
This element has now been included in all training to the British and US Army and NATO and is refreshed every 12 months. There is overwhelming medical evidence that this approach saves more lives in serious incidents. During his testimony, Tim also highlighted that he's chair of trustees of a charity called Citizen Aid, which is a charity created to educate the public on what to do in a wide variety of situations involving multiple casualties, although the teaching contained in the Citizen Aid protocol can also be delivered when there's only one casualty to deal with. It also provides guidance on what members of the public should do if faced with terrorist threats. In 2017, Citizen Aid produced a free app which can be downloaded from any mobile phone. The app gives advice in the form of easy-to-use flowcharts on what actions to take in a wide variety of situations, including shooting, stabbings and bombings. The purpose of the teaching is to be prepared, not scared, to enable the public to react appropriately in any situation. The information has also been produced in a paper format. During his testimony, the QC asked Brigadier Hodgetts, has Citizen Aid identified that schools and colleges and universities are important audiences, and if so, why? The response was, yes, very important audiences, because firstly, they are the people who are out and about on the street. We owe it to them to prepare them so that they can be prepared and not scared. But also a key objective of Citizen Aid is to have a critical mass of the general public who feel empowered. So the young population is an important target audience. He added that young people are also highly likely to be proficient in the use of their mobile telephone, which means they can access the app and navigate through it easily. Sadly, our children are growing up in a world with serious threats to life. Incidents such as the Dunblane school shootings, Hungerford, Borough Market, London Bridge and others show that these threats are ever present and will continue to be as our children reach adulthood. As a result of the Citizen Aid work, specific materials have been developed for Key Stage 1 pupils that convey the message run, hide, tell and when safe to do so, treat. This presents in an abstract and non-threatening way how to get away from a threat. It shows a cat chasing mice and is in a large format booklet called Moggie's Coming. It's the story of a cat on the loose in a school of mice. For Key Stage 2 pupils, there are a series of story cards called Lion on the Loose, which gets the messages across using a circus lion entering a school. These were trialled by 500 teachers in Birmingham in 2017 during their safeguarding training and received universally positive support from primary and secondary school teachers. Citizen Aid has also delivered presentations to the Sixth Form College in Stockport and has engaged with universities and other first aid providers. I've spoken with the trustees of Citizen Aid and they very much wish to support Wigan Borough in becoming the first local authority to deliver the information to all school-aged children. The cost to deliver Citizen Aid are minimal, with free downloadable teaching notes available online for teachers, and only a small number of issues of Moggie's Coming would be required for Key Stage 1 pupils. These materials could be provided at a reduced rate due to bulk buying, and the app for use on the mobile phones is absolutely free. You may wish to download the app for your own use. Citizen Aid have also offered to attend post-COVID restrictions a Wigan Town Centre event in the future to highlight their work and the app to adult residents and visitors. Colleagues, we owe it to our future adults and to prepare them to be able to keep themselves, their families and friends and the whole community safe. I sincerely hope you will join me in supporting this motion, the purpose of which is to support the concept of delivering this first aid training, including personal threat reduction, to our children within Wigan Borough and enhancing the safety of our residents. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Is the motion seconded?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to second the motion.
Do you wish to speak now, Councillor, or speak later in the debate?
I'll speak now, thank you. Sunday the 7th of March was like any other lockdown morning for Johnny as he woke up to check and wake his two small sons. His eldest had been feeling unwell the night before, so had slept downstairs on the sofa close to his dad. What happened next was to have a profound effect on Johnny and his family as his world turned upside down in seconds when he realised his eldest son, only 10, had slumped off the sofa and had stopped breathing. Johnny immediately did not panic, as most parents would have done, but applied his knowledge of resuscitation techniques in a way he would never have imagined, breathing life back into his beloved son. Those seconds and minutes were absolutely crucial and made the difference literally between life and death. In this event, Johnny was prepared and not scared. He was able to use that surge of adrenaline not to run away or panic, but administered the procedure he knew was needed. He was calm, confident and controlled in his response, despite feeling all those swirling emotions within. And that, I believe, is the key to this motion, being prepared for events which are completely out of your control. Many of us have lived through a series of conflicts where our safety as a community has been threatened. And we may have been on lockdown for a year, but as we emerge from this, we could also once again face those situations which are beyond our control. These events are not new, but our response to them hasn't altered. We are still woefully underprepared. This motion, however, changes that. What we are calling for is not a heightened sense of fear and threat. In fact, it is quite the opposite. This motion is underlying the need to equip our young people to be knowledgeable, to have life skills, and to be resilient in contexts which are challenging and uncertain. We've seen innovation with the Daily Mile in Wigan in the past, and now we would like our children and young people to be even more aware of their own role in keeping safe and healthy by promoting the need for these basic first aid techniques. The Kerslake report had several recommendations following the Manchester Arena bombing, and one that is particularly pertinent is the government should increase its support for public first aid training programmes, including those for children and young people. This has contributed to the inclusion of first aid being part of the national curriculum from September 2020. We are not advocating one particular approach, as we believe that schools need to look at their own context, expertise and community needs to adopt the most appropriate one. We seek instead for our children and young people to become skilled and empowered as a result of the Council's support for this motion. According to the University of Manchester, only 5% of our population feel confident to administer the very basic first aid, yet 59% of pre-hospital deaths could have been prevented and would be saved if this basic care was administered. Bystander intervention is such a powerful tool. To conclude, an update on Johnny and his son. His son is now fully recovered. The family spent a few very anxious days in hospital as their son was treated and underwent a full range of diagnostic tests. He is now back at school. Johnny, on the other hand, has raised enough money to provide free first aid lessons to over 80 children, and that is the real difference that empowerment can make. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Do any other members wish to contribute? Councillor Davis.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. 100% behind this motion, and as a school governor at the Deanery High School, can you, John, please send me more information and leaflets, and I will take in to our head and chair of governors to bring a presentation to our pupils at the Deanery. Thank you.
Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm a huge advocate for first aid training for everybody, not just young people. I'm a trainer with North West Ambulance Service and have trained 200 plus adults and children in Standish, and I know a lot of our teachers in Standish do teach first aid, but I do realise that the schools are time bound and it's intermittent what pupils are learning, so I fully support this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm fully behind this motion. In the past, I've arranged first aid courses myself through the British Red Cross up at Agford Community Centre, and it's always been very well attended. We're crying out for places, so it is, the demand is there, and it's a necessity in some cases. And my own children, their school provided first aid courses, and it was invaluable to them. So, you know, they know what to do. It sticks with them. They know what to do in an emergency, even if it's just a minor or even a major. Just the simple things of dialing 999, getting a recovery position, stuff like that. Yeah, so I'm fully behind this, and I do hope once we can, I'll be arranging my own first aid lessons with the British Red Cross up at the community centre. But yeah, I'm fully behind this, John. Councillor Harding, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't seem to have anything else. So, Councillor Harding, I now invite you to sum up on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, thanks for the comments of Councillor Davis, Parkinson and Gerard. And it's absolutely fantastic that there is first aid going on in schools. I'm well aware, of course, that the national curriculum in September 2020 does require some form of first aid training to be done, but I do feel that that is probably quite sketchy, and as Councillor Parkinson alluded to, time can be quite tight. I think you know, we can't necessarily specifically say it should be one provider over another. However, Citizen Aid have worked closely with St John Ambulance, which I'm myself a serving brother of, to produce the pocket guide that I showed earlier in their colours. They're prepared to produce that, if necessary, with Wigan Council's logo on it, if you like. In terms of the benefits, quite simply, using CABC and dealing with catastrophic hemorrhage is very, very simple, but experience shows that if somebody is bleeding from an amputated limb or blast injury or severe bleeding, giving CPR to somebody, putting air into the lungs, is not going to help them if they're losing all the blood through severe bleeding. And the information that's available is very, very simple to use and is very easy to use. Councillor Davis asked if I could get some info to him. I'm more than happy to do that. What I would say is, if you simply go on the internet and type in Citizen Aid, all the information is available. The teaching notes can be accessed. I've spoken with a guy called Mike Robinson, who's a trustee of Citizen Aid, ex-police officer in West Midlands, and he's quite happy to come online or get some of his staff to come online as a charity and to deliver something to schools. So I'll be speaking to Mike with a view to contacting Councillor Davis as well. So I would hope, in summary then, Mr. Mayor, that we get support, and I would hope it would be unanimous. But thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Can I now put the motion to the vote? Can all those against the approval of the motion please show in the chat facility? I'm pleased to say the result of the vote is unanimous, no against. So thank you, and that concludes the business for this evening, and it's been a pleasure. Bye.